Hello and welcome back to my strange little corner of YouTube. This weekend I went to see a film. I went to see Dream Scenario, which is the latest release from the indie film studio A24, starring Nicolas Cage, so I knew it would be great, just from that basis alone. In this film, Nicolas's humdrum character becomes an overnight sensation by unwittingly appearing in everyone's dreams. It's a simple premise, but a perfectly executed one, as our main character struggles with his newfound fame and failing to live up to his expectations, that he must be important and noteworthy, but in fact is quite the opposite. So I've always had a fascination with dreams and sleep, and the science behind it, and the philosophy behind dreams. One of the gifts someone in my family gave me when I was younger was a dream book, which is a big book, trying to help you define what the dreams meant, such as if you dream of bees.
Bees?
Beads.
Beads?
That means something. I don't know, you're going to meet someone new, I don't know. I don't subscribe to any of that. In fact, during this video I may talk about a few things which sound quite far-fetched and not grounded in science, so just to be clear, I don't believe any of this for certain. I'm a believe it when I see it kind of person, but these are just ideas that I've had that I find kind of interesting, and this film was a good opportunity to talk about those and explore those. There's a reason that we as humans find dreams and talking about them so fascinating, trying to find meaning, because we spend essentially a third of our life asleep. And how many nights a week do you dream? It's probably at least one or two. What is dreams? What are dreams? What is our dreams? The scientific reason behind it is when we sleep and we go into REM, where it's kind of a side effect of our brains processing memories. So I like to see it as if you're moving data from your phone to your computer, you're transferring it from temporary storage to permanent storage, or thereabouts. And our brains kind of give us the side effect of visuals and imagery that may or may not be familiar, but it's just our brain's way of processing this information. One of the reasons why sleep is important. We might not remember our dreams or be aware of them at the time, but our brain is still doing these important things in the background while we sleep. What if it's more than that, or what if it's not just that? So I like to see it as our brains are bored when we sleep. Just our brains are always on, they're always doing something. And what if our consciousness, the thing that makes us who we are and think and do, what if that is always on as well? So what happens when we go to sleep and we pass 8 hours of our night just disappears, and we wake up in the morning and it's suddenly the morning and we've just lost 8 hours of our life? What if we didn't? This would be where a whiteboard would be helpful. I can, do drawings and things, but I'm not a very good artist, so I'm not going to embarrass myself with that. So imagine you've got 3 lines. One of them is space, so what you're looking at now, this is my space. Not the website MySpace, but my space. You've also got the second line, which is time, and that is why I'm delivering this monologue to you. I'm going through time by seconds or whatever. And then what if you've got a third line, which is consciousness? Now, we don't see consciousness, or not in a way that is generally understood, although there have been a few articles that popped up on my phone last night about dreams and the mechanics of them, which clearly shows that very, very smart, important people are doing their research on this as well. I'm not smart or important. I just have some strange storytelling ideas. So you've got these 3 lines: space, time, and consciousness. Now, we always assume that time is a constant. It's always a straight line. It doesn't waver. And so we kind of base everything around time. What time is it? You know, what time should we be getting up in the morning, and what time should we go into bed? And everything always proceeds at the exact same rate of time. So when we go to sleep, we just lose 8 hours all of a sudden. Just goes nowhere. Now, logically, you're unconscious, you're asleep. To anyone watching you, those 8 hours, oh, that's a bit creepy, why someone would be watching you sleep, those 8 hours have passed as normal because they've been awake and they've been counting the time, because this person clearly has nothing better to do than watch someone sleep and count the seconds. But to you, those 8 hours didn't pass. You just kind of skipped from midnight to 8 a.m., for example. So that line in time, imagine that line can kind of waver in some way. So if you can get your head around that, if you can just assume for a moment that is what's happening, our space and consciousness are constant, but time suddenly stops and then starts again. Or we just skip 8 hours, but everything else is a constant.
More like a big ball of wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
As I said, I don't believe this. This is just an idea. And this is something that philosophers and, again, smart people are talking about as well. So what is happening to our consciousness is to when we sleep and those 8 hours disappear, that's fine. You know, we've just skipped time. We've just bent time to move from point A to point B in the quickest time possible. But when we dream, we are experiencing something in that time. Between midnight and 8 a.m, something is happening that we don't quite understand and we can't really interpret. So if we assume that our consciousness is doing something, is processing something at this time, you know, I've not had my caffeine yet, so I'm kind of struggling with this one as well. Let's go back to the start. So, Dream Scenario, the film about... Suddenly everyone starts dreaming about this one particular person. In the scenario that I've just... The example that I've just given, where consciousness is always on, and it's just traversing through time differently to what we know, could this person appearing in everyone's dream, could that actually happen? Maybe. If we look at other films, particularly the Nightmare on Elm Street series, which I've not actually seen yet, not that I remember, but that's about an evil presence that uses dreams to stalk and kill its prey.
I've been guarding my gate for a long time, bitch.
It's a horror film. It's very far-fetched, and, you know, I hope no one believes it for themselves, because that'd be quite scary. But it's kind of similar to that. If we assume that dreams are our consciousness processing information from somewhere, it just interprets it differently to someone else because, you know, maybe we've experienced something in that day that is similar to what our consciousness is experiencing at night when our bodies are asleep. Then maybe if you also assume that consciousness is this massive shared realm, this dimension, the same as if you go to a football stadium or a concert venue and you are surrounded by thousands of people, you're all sharing a space, right? You're all sharing a time. What if there's another level, which is consciousness, that you're all sharing the same events in the conscious realm, but we don't really worry about that because we're all conscious and we're all aware of our surroundings and we're all enjoying the same event, so we don't really tap into that consciousness. So when we all sleep, what if our consciousnesses are just kind of floating around and doing nothing because it's bored? We're waiting for our bodies to wake up. But what if something monumental happened in that consciousness realm, such as this rather boring character from a film just suddenly turns up? Then yeah, okay. If we use that as an example, then yes, dream scenario could happen. But if it was possible, then it probably would have happened by now in real life. So we're all fascinated by talking about our dreams, and it's something that most conversations will usually end up with, is discussing what our dreams were last night, or, you know, when you wake up with your partner and you're talking about how you slept, and I had this amazing dream last night about cottage cheese and whatever. Like we are fascinated by dreams. And some people will go so far as to say that our dreams are connected and our dreams are shared. And there was a point in the last few years when I was going through a particularly tough time when I believed that my dreams were shared with someone else. I set up experiments and tried a few things out just to see if that was true. Turned out it wasn't. But again, it's just a really fascinating subject as to why we find it so interesting, when in reality we're just asleep. Like how we just settle for that, we're just asleep. So another way to explain this hypothesis is, imagine you've got an old stereo and you turn the volume up. There's no sound coming in, but you turn the volume up and you keep turning it up until you start hearing noise in the background, like hissing or distortion or interference from another device or something like that. And you keep turning it up and you get more and more of this distortion. So yeah, there's scientific reasons, the technical reasons why you're getting that background noise.
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
But imagine if you go into a completely silent room with no light, no external stimulus, you've got no contact with the outside world, but you can't sleep, or you don't sleep. Your brain's going to start thinking about stuff, or it's going to start wandering. Maybe you'll start hallucinating. If you look at how hallucinogens work, what they're basically doing is just increasing the volume in your brain. So it brings up thoughts or memories that you haven't really thought about or had the chance to think about. This could be interference from other parts of the brain. It could be any of this sort of stuff. But we then start to interpret it in a way that we understand, and that's why when people have hallucinations, they're kind of recurring usually, or it's a specific subject that keeps coming up. When you take hallucinogenics, you generally kind of see the same sort of things. Like if you listen to anyone talk about trip reports and what they've experienced whilst on hallucinogenics and psychedelics, there's usually a commonality. Like we kind of experience similar things when we talk about it afterwards. So what if when we're asleep and our brains are bored and our consciousness is just doing nothing, it starts to increase the volume in that brain and start picking out details that weren't necessarily visible before. As I said, I'm not a particularly smart person. This is just stuff I like to imagine. And when there's films like Dream Scenario, or pretty much any of Michael Gondry, any of his works like Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind or The Science of Sleep, these are films that are not necessarily about sharing dreams or sharing consciousness, but it's someone's interpretation of their dreams and they're putting that to film. Anything like that is fascinating to me, and it gets me thinking about the possibilities of storytelling in that way. Whether I believe any of what I've just been talking about, don't know. I also don't believe in vampires and aliens from Ridley Scott's films, but it's still fun to think about these things. And if I was able to write a screenplay, hint hint, this is kind of the sort of thing I'd be looking into and wanting to explore more. But for now, I'll just recommend Dream Scenario because it was a fun watch, I'm a card carrying member of the A24 club, so I'm going to be quite biased on anything that they release. But this was one that held up. It was a good film, and I had a great time watching it, and I'd recommend you go and watch it too. And if you want to do some further reading, I don't know, read a book. Yeah, anyway, that's my random chat for the day. I hope I made a little bit of sense. If I didn't, let me know in the comments, and give me a thumbs down if you think I'm being completely ridiculous. If you think this was somewhat interesting and entertaining, please tell me why, because, you know, I'm just talking to a camera. But yeah, subscribe and all that. Manchester weather update. It is windy. There is a storm, but no rain at the moment. And a mustache update. As you can see, it's John, because I got 12 days into November and then realised I looked like Peter Sellers, so I got rid of it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next Rambly Ramble.